Okay, so let's say I have nums dictionary. The dictionary that have the actual numbers as keys and the values, the strings that represents these numbers. All right. Now, if I want to have the items, okay, I can call nums underscore dictionary dot items. So that gives me a view that is items view. Now you see, if I say type of items, it has its own type. Okay, if I try to print it, it looks like as if it's a list of tuples, right? So that's a representation of the dictionary. Okay, it represents the keys and values as if they were tuples. Okay, so when you get to loop over them, you think, what would be the element that you loop over or you iterate over? Now see, when we had, if I go here, when we knew that we're going to iterate over the keys, then we have one variable to point at them, okay? When we get to iterate over the tuples, then every time it gives me one of these tuples, okay? So the loop that runs over these will take two values at a time. See how does it look like? Now the items give you a view that looks like a list of tuples. So every tuple has that key and the value as elements in it. Yes.
So it's almost like it's like a two-dimensional array.
Yes.
It takes two values in the
Yes. Now, when you loop over, when you iterate over this list, when we iterate over any list, what happens in every iteration? It gives me one element of the list, right? Now, these elements in this list are two elements tuple. So at every iteration, what do we get at every iteration? One tuple, yeah, two values and one tuple. Okay? So how do we receive them in order to work with them? We receive them like it looks like a tuple, but it has two variables in there. So the first element in the tuple will be stored in the K. The second element of the tuple will be stored in the V. Okay? Is this clear? All right. If we are going to use the keys as the view, it has its own type. Now it just looks like it's a list of the key values. Okay, so that's easier. When we loop over them, it just every time it gives me one value, so I receive it in one variable, and I can use, because this is the key, I can use it to access the value. All right, now how do you think the third one would look like? So we have, this is two of the views that are there. So one of them give you a list of pairs, okay, in tuples, and the other gives you the list of values that are the keys. Now, how do you think the values? Oh, sorry, yeah. So how about the view that comes from the values? How does it look like?
Just do 1, 2, 3 stuff out.
Yeah, the strings 1, 2, 3 in a list. Yeah, and then you can loop over them one value at a time. Yeah.
Also, two quick questions. One, when you say 4K in stick, how does K know to increment through the list?
No, that's the for loop, right?
Yeah. But how does K like scan through?
This is the for. Okay, let's do that. Let's have it on VS Code. It's for loop, right? There is no. Remember the for loop. We are looping over the elements of the given sequence or given iterable, right? So the k value would take one value of the list at a time. Every iteration has a one value of the list. Let's open that. Let's open the VS Code and trace it. So let me just. So I'm gonna create a dictionary here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm gonna create a for loop that loops over the values, let's say. Okay, so for v n, and we give it anything that can be iterated over, right? So let's say d dot values, and then I'll print that v. Okay, so let's try it out first. Oh, sorry. So values is a function, right? We are iterating over what returns from it. All right, so how does that happen? We can put a breakpoint inside and trace it. So let's do that. So we have the variable first time is equal to v equal 1, because this is the first iteration. All right, now if I step in the next iteration, it takes the next element of the sequence that we're given to it. So it will transform into 2. Okay, and then we print 2. And then in the third iteration, it will take the element that is next in the list, which is 3, and then print it. Okay, is this clear? Yeah.
If the keys were arbitrary words, even like strings, would it still work? Would it be able to still iterate easily between them?
The keys, now we are iterating over the values, right? We can iterate over the keys too, regardless of any, you know what? Let's make them tuples. Okay. 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9. Okay, now instead of iterating over the keys, I want to iterate the values. I want to iterate over the keys. So let's say I'm just gonna use another key here. And just for visibility, I'm gonna receive these so that we can see it independently when we trace it. All right, so what comes from calling the dictionary.keys is a list of the values and the list that the list of the keys, and the keys that happen to be in this dictionary are all tuples, right? So this loop would start looping over one at a time. So the first iteration, the k would be the first element in the list, which happened to be a tuple. Okay, second iteration, k would be the second element in the list, which is another tuple. Okay, and then the third iteration, k will be the third element in the list, which is the third tuple. Okay, regardless whatever that is, it could be a frozen set, a string, anything that is hashable can be a key.
Okay.
All right. Now, now we've seen how to create the dictionary using the comprehension. We're almost done. It's only 2 slides left. So we can use the constructor of the dictionary to create the list as well. So we're going to talk about this keywords and how to define functions, the different ways to use arguments and functions in Python. So you don't have to worry about this. This is called, this is an indication of arbitrary number of keyword arguments. We will talk about what does that mean later. This is how it look like. You don't have to worry about it. We'll talk about it in detail next time. But what I wanted to emphasize here, that we can use the dictionary by indicating the mapping directly, either without calling the constructor or by calling the constructor. So here, when we use the curly brackets right away, it automatically called the constructor. Okay, so we don't, it's kind of optional here. But what really is needs explanation here, when we talk about iterables, so the third option there, when we give it an iterable and we want to create a dictionary out of it. So an iterable could be a list or a set, or what comes back out of this zip function. Okay, now in order to convert an iterable to a dictionary, it has to be the elements in that iterable has to be tuples, key value tuples. Okay, so we can specify it like this directly. This is a list, right? So here, if you look at this one here, this line, so this is a list, right? As long as it has tuples, it's good. Okay, so the first value in the tuple will be taken as a key, and the second will be the value. All right, now what about this? What comes out of this function? What comes out of this function is the function takes any arbitrary number of iterables and put them together in tuples. Okay, so if we give it 2 lists like this, what comes out of this zip function is the 2 lists combined in tuples. Okay, so the first element in the first list will be the first element in the first tuple. The first element in the second list will be the second element in the first tuple. So see how it works? It takes the first element with the first element in a tuple, second element with the second element in another tuple, and so on. Okay, so it can be a convenient way to put 2 lists together and create a dictionary out of it. Okay, but the zip function itself, it doesn't have to have it is a general function, takes any number of lists and put them together in tuples. Okay,
All of this have to be the same line.
not necessary. So if it will create the tuples based on the shortest list.
Okay.
All right, so again, if you give it 3 lists, it will create tuples of 3 elements based on the shortest list. All right, so okay, we can talk about this next time. So how about this? Think about it. What do you think this means? What does that mean? Yes.
It's checking to see if they're all equivalent.
Yeah. So this is a short way to combine conditions that are combined with the AND operator. Remember when we talked about comparisons, and we want comparisons operators are binary, and if you want to have 2 comparisons, then we can combine them with the AND operator. So we can drop the and put them all in a list like this. Okay, so a short way to combine multiple AND-based comparisons. All right, so let's end it here and we talk the next time.